In the 1970s, grocery shopping looked very different from today. Stores were smaller, prices were lower, and every trip to the supermarket felt like a weekly ritual for American families. By the early 1970s, the American supermarket was everywhere. More than 12,000 full-line stores stretched from coast to coast, a far cry from the small corner grocers that once dotted every neighborhood. Chains like Safeway, Kroger, and A&P grew into household names, their logos glowing above vast parking lots. This expansion wasn't just about building bigger stores, it was a new way of organizing how families shopped. With centralized buying, national chains could purchase goods in bulk, negotiate lower prices, and keep shelves stocked with the same brands and packages, whether you lived in Ohio or Oregon. Each store became a familiar anchor for the weekly trip, designed to serve not just the individual shopper, but the whole family. Centralized buying meant decisions about what filled the aisles were made in corporate offices, not behind the local counter. Managers ordered directly from distribution centers, and truckloads of canned goods, frozen dinners, and household staples arrived on regular schedules. This system kept prices steady, even as inflation and fuel shortages loomed in the background. The result was a kind of national rhythm. Families planned their week around that single dependable grocery run. Metal carts lined up at the entrance, ready to be filled with enough food to last until next Saturday. The rise of these chains brought a new kind of predictability. No matter where you lived, the store layout, the brands on the shelves, and the weekly promotions all felt assuringly familiar. The supermarket became more than a place to buy food. It was a hub where neighbors crossed paths, parents taught children how to compare prices, and Saturday afternoons carried the quiet buzz of a shared ritual. If you enjoy nostalgic documentaries about everyday life in the past, consider subscribing and turning on notifications for more stories like this. Chain expansion and centralized systems laid the groundwork for everything that followed. The colors in the aisles, the weekly budgeting, and the sense that, for a few hours each week, the supermarket belonged to everyone. A trip through a supermarket in the 1970s began with the simple act of grabbing a metal cart, sturdy, deep, and built to hold a week's worth of groceries for a growing family. These carts, lined up near the entrance, had replaced the smaller wire baskets of earlier years, making it possible to shop less often but buy more each visit. For many, it was a familiar image: a mother steering the cart, a child perched in the front, and a handwritten list tucked alongside a purse or wallet. The store's layout shaped every step. Most supermarkets used a grid plan with long, straight aisles running from front to back. This design made it easy to find staples and encouraged a steady, purposeful pace. Shoppers moved up and down each aisle, passing neat rows of canned vegetables, boxes of cereal, and shelves stacked with glass soda bottles. The grid layout was efficient. Every product had its place, and regulars could navigate with their eyes closed. But some stores favored the racetrack, a looping path that guided shoppers in a wide circle around the store's perimeter. This layout nudged people past special displays, seasonal end caps, bakery samples, or weekly promotions, before leading them through the center aisles for essentials. The racetrack made browsing feel like a gentle circuit, with impulse buys waiting at every turn. Both layouts served a purpose. They helped families plan meals for the week, compare prices, and stretch their budgets. The aisles were wide enough for 2 carts to pass, yet close enough to spark a friendly hello between neighbors. In those moments, the supermarket felt less like a warehouse and more like a shared space, where routines and small connections unfolded side by side. If you enjoy nostalgic documentaries about everyday life in the past, consider subscribing and turning on notifications for more stories like this. The simple act of pushing a cart, choosing a path, pausing at a display, chatting with a clerk was part of the rhythm that made grocery shopping in the 1970s both practical and quietly meaningful. A supermarket in the 1970s was a riot of color and promise. Cereal boxes, Lucky Charms, Frosted Flakes, Cheerios lined the shelves in bold reds, yellows, and blues. each one a billboard for childhood, chunky lettering, cartoon mascots, and the lure of a hidden toy or decoder ring inside. The cereal aisle became a ritual, a place where choosing breakfast meant picking out a prize. Canned goods stretched in neat rows, their labels showing steaming soup or a family dinner. Campbell's, redesigned by Doyle Dane and Bernbach, wore a crisp red and white look, sometimes marked low sodium or diet. The move from tin to aluminum brought a sleeker touch, and embossed logos caught the light. Frozen foods, still new to many, offered Swanson TV dinners in plastic trays sealed with photo-printed lids, each meal arranged just so. Freezer doors flashed color codes, purple for meals, green for vegetables. Shrink-wrapped plastics and full-color printing made even frozen peas look fresh. Soda bottles stood heavy and glassy, metal caps gleaming. Diet sodas like Tab and Diet Coke arrived in slimmer bottles with silver-gray labels, hinting at something modern. Private label goods kept things simple. Muted colors, neat serif type, value without fuss, shaped by agencies like Saatchi and Saatchi. Design agencies and new materials turned every aisle into a gallery, packaging into a silent contest for attention, choices made before a single price tag entered the picture. A handwritten grocery list in the 1970s was more than a reminder. It was a plan for stretching every dollar. On Saturday mornings, a mother might scan the circulars spread across the kitchen table, circling the best deals in the red pen: eggs, 45 cents a dozen, a box of cereal, 58 cents, a 12-ounce bottle of soda, 29 cents. She would weigh each choice against the week's budget, mentally adding up the cost as she moved through the aisles. In the Midwest, ground beef often ran 90 cents a pound, while in the Northeast, that same pound might cost $1.10. These small regional differences mattered, especially when meat prices spiked during the oil crisis, or when a family needed to feed 4 on a single paycheck. A typical cart held 2 dozen eggs, 2 boxes of cereal, 6 sodas, 4 frozen TV dinners at $1.25 each, 4 cans of tomatoes at 24 cents apiece, and 5 pounds of ground beef. The total? About $12.30 for the week, a sum that covered breakfast, school lunches, and simple dinners. Today, that same basket runs nearly $50, and after adjusting for inflation, the real cost has climbed even higher. In 1973, a gallon of whole milk cost $1.45, and now it is more than double. Bread that once sold for 22 cents a loaf now averages over $2. Every price tag became a small decision. Shoppers compared brands and weighed store specials, sometimes swapping beef for beans when prices soared. The weekly circular was not just advertising, it was a guide for making the most of what you had. Budgeting in those days was a quiet skill passed from parent to child, a shared conversation in the aisle as the cart filled up, one careful choice at a time. Checkout in the 1970s was a dance of hands, sounds, and practiced routine. Each item slid across the counter, and the cashier tapped out prices on a heavy NCR 33 register, fingers moving quickly over rows of metal keys. The clack and ring of the register echoed down the lane, a steady rhythm as numbers tallied up by hand. There were no barcodes, just small paper stickers on every can and box, sometimes faded, sometimes bright with a sale price in red. When a price was missing or hard to read, the cashier might pause, flipping open a thick price book to check the latest cost. At the end of the counter, a teenage bagger, often wearing a crisp white shirt and a metal bagger badge pinned to the collar, waited to start their craft. Bagging was its own skill, learned on the job and sometimes tested in friendly paper bag folding contests after hours. Glass bottles and cans went in first, bread and eggs on top, and produce tucked carefully along the sides. Brown paper bags stamped with the store's logo stood open and ready. The bagger's quick hands folded the tops into neat triangles, sometimes with a practiced snap. For many, this was a first job and a first taste of responsibility, and a chance to swap stories with regulars as they packed up a week's worth of groceries. The checkout lane was more than a place to pay. It was the final stop in a familiar routine, a moment where the sounds and small talk lingered as families prepared to head home. A supermarket in the 1970s was more than a place to fill a cart. It was a neighborhood gathering spot, woven into the fabric of daily life. Shoppers paused at the entrance to collect a cardstock club card, each one stamped by hand after a purchase, promising a free loaf of bread or a few dollars off next week's total. These early loyalty programs felt personal. The clerk behind the counter might recognize your face, ask about your family, or remember your usual order from the deli. The bulletin board near the bakery was crowded with flyers, school fundraisers, church suppers, lost pet notices, and hand-drawn ads for babysitting or lawn mowing. Parents stopped to scan the notices, often bumping into neighbors and catching up on local news. Children, restless after the aisles, clustered near the deli counter, where a friendly employee might offer a slice of bologna or a taste of sharp cheddar as a small treat. Small talk flowed easily in these spaces. Clerks greeted regulars by name, sharing a joke or a quick story as they rang up groceries. The rhythm of the store, the hum of conversation, the shuffle of carts, the soft thump of paper bags, turned a simple errand into a familiar ritual. For many, the weekly trip was as much about seeing friends and feeling part of something larger as it was about stocking the pantry. In the heart of the supermarket, community happened in quiet, everyday ways. Today, grocery aisles are bigger and digital checkouts are everywhere, but the heart of the weekly shop endures. For millions, trips in the 1970s were about more than groceries. They wove community into daily life. That simple ritual still shapes how we gather, connect, and remember what matters. Thanks for watching.